2024 was a year where we didn't see a lot of big retirements, or really that many retirements at all for the MMA world, and specifically the UFC. Obviously, I know that Demetrius Johnson was the big highlight this year, but like, other than that, we're talking about the UFC, we're talking about what, like a Jack Shore? Damon Jackson, Carla Esparza, Michelle Waterson got her own fucking video promo. Not for Stipe though, because if you ask Dana White, apparently being on the same poster as Jon Jones is enough. But we're at this point with so many big names in the UFC and so many big stars and so many of our fan favorites that we're looking at this and they only have 1 fight left, 2 fights left, maybe even 3, and I just sense a lot of retirements going down for the UFC in 2025, maybe even like a 2026, who knows. But today, obviously, we're going to be predicting which UFC fighters I think are going to be retiring next year. So just jumping into it with, hey, it is what it is, dude. Michael Chandler's a dirtbag. Dustin Poirier still ranked number 4 in the world, baby, still cracking at lightweight. 23-8 UFC record. The dime has been around for a while, baby. I mean, I know that we all thought going into the Makhachev fight, the big narrative was not just in terms like stylistic, like, oh, this is a banger fight and Poirier's going to present a lot of problems for Makhachev on the feet, big test, what, big name, legacy, whatever the fuck. But in terms of just like storyline wise, let's be honest, we all thought that was going to be Dustin Poirier's last fight. He was going into the build-up saying that it was going to be his retirement fight, and if he didn't win, he wanted to retire, or if he did win, he was going to retire, whatever it may be. I think we all thought that that was going to be Dustin Poirier's last fight week, and it turns out, you know, afterwards performed really well, and he said he wants to fight 1 or 2 more times. So, and I know he wants to go out in Louisiana. I don't know how that's going to work because I know they haven't been in years. I think his time is coming to an end, and it's sad, man. I mean, such a great run in the UFC, and it's like he's still in it too. 35, so he's definitely probably the youngest on this list, going to be 36 next year. And honestly, I think that Dustin Poirier can beat a lot of the top 15, so I don't even think it's a matter of like his prime is getting away from him or the accumulated damage, which granted, he is getting older and he has accumulated a lot of damage. There's a lot of wear and tear on this guy, you know? I mean, over 30 fights in the UFC alone in his debut early 2011. I mean, all due respect to Poirier, and clearly it's worked out. I mean, sadly never won the belt, but he's one of the best fighters of all time to have never won an undisputed belt, and honestly, he's a top 5 lightweight still. He has a stacked fucking resume, win or lose, so, well, mostly win, hopefully, but I think Poirier is too self-aware, too smart to allow himself to be like a Tony Ferguson. He's just going to go on a downhill skid. He's just going to let a bunch of people pass him up. He's going to be the gatekeeper, and I don't think he has a problem with like putting people over. We all know Poirier's a sore winner, don't get me wrong, but he openly took that BSD fight, and he didn't have to do that. Like, BSD was ranked number 12. Biggest win at the time was Matt Frivola. I mean, obviously this aged like shit because BSD is where he's at right now. But at the end of the day, man, Poirier he doesn't have to like keep just putting over young guys or whatever. I think he can beat a lot of them, but I just think, unfortunately, thank you for the memories, Dustin Poirier, man. Absolutely great fighter and absolutely great legacy. And again, I don't think it's like a lack of skill or anything like that that's keeping him out of it. But he's just made his intentions very clear that he wants to go out in Louisiana. He wants a fight or 2 more. He knows he's not going to reach the undisputed belt, so it is what it is. So moving on up next to the current heavyweight champion, Johnny fucking Bones Jones. Who knows when this guy's going to retire, man? Apparently he has some 5-year plan. He wants to fight like Derek Lewis, Jamal Hill, whatever the fuck, dude. I'm pretty open about, like, you know, for the people that are watching my channel, I'm just not a Jon Jones guy. I was a big DC guy, and I'm seeing this fuck, dude, and especially lately, the whole Aspinall situation and just like picking and ducking and all this shit. I'm not even gonna try and like disrespect Jones' legacy. He is the GOAT, you know, his resume is absolutely fucking stacked. I'm not gonna take anything away from him, but it's just, he needs to leave, alright? I'm not saying that the sport is worse with or without Jones, but I'm just saying, like, this whole stalling of the division, it's just fucking ridiculous. Like, UFC posted some shit the other day, right? And it was all the champions before, at the start of the year and at the end of the year, alright? And it said at the start of the year, it had Aspinall's name, interim champion, next to Jones. And we ended the year and the interim champion is still there. And like, I get wanting more money and all this shit, okay? But it's time for Jones to go, okay? Had a great legacy. He's the fucking GOAT. He did his thing. I'm sure that like a Poirier, a Makhachev, whatever the fuck, even a Pereira, who the hell knows? Like, somebody could pass Jones one day. It's probably gonna happen, you know? Like, the sport just evolves. But I just think it's time, okay? He's made it clear that, like, I mean, if he doesn't fight Tom, like, just go. It's fine, right? I know he wants to like vacate the belt and shit, and he wants to, you guys are silly, man. I just want to have some fun fights. Fuck that! Nobody is going to be signing up for a Jamal Hill or a Derek Lewis versus Jon Jones fight, okay? Great legacy, all right? He's unfucking stoppable. Every time that you throw a guy at this guy and you think he's going to beat Jon Jones, they always end up losing, whatever the hell. This guy is stacked with plot armor, and on top of that, skill for skill, he's very elite. So it's not even a matter of just skill-wise or entertainment-wise or aura-wise. Like, Jones is still like that guy, one of the biggest stars in the company, but I just think this whole stalling of the division, I just think he's made it very clear that he wants to bounce very, very soon. But just fucking pull the trigger already. fighter, or just make up your mind or some shit. If the Aspinall fight's not gonna happen, respectfully, like, all this fun fight shit, you've already done enough. Alright, just go. Just leave us be, bro, alright? No disrespect to the Jones fans or whatever, but I just think Jones being here right now, you know, especially when there's a title on him, I think it's just actively hurting the heavyweight division. It's actively hurting Aspinall's career. And I can honestly, Jones being that twisted enough where he's literally just dragging out this fight against Aspinall just to give him to waste away his prime, alright? Might seem fucked up, but you gotta realize that this is the same guy who, insert blank, with failed drug tests and pregnant lady. All right, whatever. We're just going to move on, okay? Jon Jones, I think he's going to be retiring next year. So moving on, up next to Henry Cejudo, still in the top 7 of bantamweight, Jesus Christ. But Henry Cejudo, man, I think next year he's going to be retiring, okay? He's a prize fighter, and I think that he only wants to be fighting if it's relatively around the gold. And I think that each fight he's going slower and slower away from it. And I think after the losses to Aldo and Merab, I just think he's aware that the thought of him once again reclaiming an undisputed title, let alone 2, flyweight or whatever the hell. I think Pantoja could beat him right now. As crazy it is, I think Cejudo's a little too bulked up and getting a little bit too old. But I understand that Cejudo hasn't had the longest career in the UFC. I mean, debuted in 2014, don't get me wrong, but only 14 UFC fights. But this guy wasted his prime, and it's so frustrating. And, I'm sure he knows it more than anybody else. The worst mistake of his career was retiring at 30 with both of the belts. Like, I get it. You want to go out on top. But now we're at this thing where you really did think that you were ending your career as a top 10 fighter of all time. And now more and more, each year that goes by, it's slowly, Cejudo's going down and down the all time. And if you have Cejudo in your top 15, top 20, fair enough, I guess. Like, I'm not going to blame you. Everything's relative. It's all our own opinions when it comes to GOAT lists and all that shit. But at the end of the day, I just think that Cejudo, the age is getting a bit much. I think he realizes, I'm not getting any closer to the belt. The last time he fought was Merab in February, and he lost that. Had a good first round. Don't get me wrong. I don't even think Cejudo is, like, getting that old. I don't think he's that bad skill-wise even at this age. Like, he's still going to be able to hold his own in the feet against most of the division. I think his wrestling is going to be able to stand up. I mean, when he's going to run into, like, a Merab or an Umar, clearly those guys, it's just the age and the momentum. They're going to get the better of him. But there's winnable fights for Cejudo. I could see Cejudo beating a Sandhagen. I could see Cejudo beating a Song Yadong. Do I think he's going to be guys like that? No, but, like, it's competitive enough, and Cejudo was skilled enough where, like, he's still in it, but I just think, like I said, he's a prize fighter. He's not going to be just fucking wasting his time and taking unnecessary damage just to take it and put guys over. He already put Aldo over, already put Merab over, and I think he's just... This whole thing about just, like, getting closer to 40 and getting less and less away from when you retired in your prime, I don't know. I just see the end coming soon for Cejudo. I don't know who they're going to book him up against, but it is what it is. Moving on up next to the lightweight division, we have old man Dariush. Can you believe that this guy is the same age as Moicano? And they're going to fight next month, and it's literally insane how old man Dariush... I just called the motherfucker old man Dariush. And Moicano, this guy's in his second prime right now. He's rising the ranks. He's killing it, which he is. Moicano's unstoppable right now. It's amazing. I'm a Moicano fan. I think he's going to whoop Dariush. I'll get into that in a second, but I just think it's funny that literally they're the same age, and yet this guy with the gray hair and all this shit, and everyone's just... Okay. Oh, man, Dariush. Okay, so let's just get into this. I think that Dariush is going to retire next year. I don't believe he even fought this year. I believe the last loss was to Arman Tsarukyan and knockout 2. This guy's coming off of 2 brutal knockouts, Tsarukyan and Oliveira, and you know what? Don't get me wrong. In terms of rest and recovery, he took the full year off, and I'm sure that he's going to be able to, probably still take some big shots against certain guys, gave his mind some time to heal. But at the end of the day, it's not like he's going to be getting stronger. It's not like he's going to be getting faster. It's not like the fight IQ is just going to keep going up. And also, with the division is kind of as deep as lightweight, Dariush, I think he understands where he's at this point in his career. Again, took care of the damage, but even against a guy like Moicano, I think Moicano's going to go and he's going to whoop him at 311. And then what are you left with Dariush? He's going to be booted outside of the top 10 after that. And then there's just killers after that. You're going to give this guy Joel Alvarez, a Jalen Turner, a Patty fucking Pimblett. Yeah, I mean, there's just dangerous matchups left and right for this guy. And Dariush, though, don't get me wrong, 16-6 in the UFC, really solid record, and he did formulate a really good win streak before the Oliveira fight, so I gotta respect it. And Dariush, he's skilled, he's well-rounded, don't get me wrong, but I just think this is one of those things where the old man allegations are finally coming in. I just think, even though his chin may be healed, I don't even think it's going to matter. I just think skill for skill, this guy has kind of hit the wall already. You know what I mean? So it is what it is. I just can't see him sticking around and just putting over guys and just continually taking the damage. And it's going to be like a Tony Ferguson. This guy's getting finished like 7 times in a row, but I don't know. So it is what it is. So moving on, up next to Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. Now, this one hurts, and this is surprisingly the first guy on this list that's over 40. And Wonderboy, even though he's 41, all due respect for still being in there and still getting after it, man, because he looks sharp in there, and he still looks quick. We've seen it against a few of his last opponents, most recently Joaquin Buckley. Stephen Thompson was making that fight competitive. Going into the third, you could say it was 1-1. I know some people had it 2-0 for Thompson. Like, he still is one of the best strikers in the UFC. That might be crazy to say. As good as he looks on the feet and like as quick as he is despite the old age, like, and by the way, I want to preface, obviously this isn't the best Stephen Thompson we've ever fucking seen. He's faster than ever. He's a bad matchup. He's a bad matchup for a lot of these guys, man. I'm not saying that shit, okay? But I am saying that, like, even though he's 41, the skills are clearly still kind of there, man, and all due respect to him, but I just think at the end of the day, 41 is 41, okay? He's still not getting any faster than he was, okay? The matchups are just becoming more and more dangerous for him, and the thing is about, Stephen Thompson just got finished by Joaquin Buckley, and I don't believe he's been finished, man, on the feet since Anthony Pettis, Superman Punch from like 2017. So Stephen Thompson, man, he's been putting over guys. He's still being active. He's still fighting, still in the rankings. And there's good matchups for him, don't get me wrong, but like 41 is 41, okay? Stephen Thompson doesn't owe us anything. He's put on fun fights. He's fought for the title. He's putting over young guys right now. But at the end of the day, man, I just think every fighter, there's going to be a wall, okay? And especially now that you're in the 40s. But, 12-8, overall UFC record, but unfortunately 1-4 in his last 5, and on top of that, ever since kind of like the late 2010s, it's kind of been a lot of losses racking up for Wonderboy. Such an entertaining striker, and it's given us a lot of good memories, but unfortunately, it's at the end of the road. Moving on, up next to, also in the welterweight division, we got Beneil Burns. I'm a Beneil Burns fan, man. I think going against a fight like Sean Brady, for example, that's a fight where I think if that fight happened like 2 years ago, maybe 3, I don't know. I think that Gilbert wins that fight. Gilbert had, I feel like on paper, the advantages going in that fight, but I'm just saying against a guy like Brady 2 or 3 years ago, that main event Apex slot, that's a fight where stylistically, I think Burns would have won, but it's just one of those things where sometimes fighters lose purely because of age, and that's a real factor. Sometimes you just don't get the best version of a said guy that shows up, and Gilbert Burns, I feel like that's going to be a lot of matchups for him. Looked good against JDM, and granted that was April. This Sean Brady fight I'm talking about was September, so it's crazy that just 3 months a difference can make, but that's kind of what happens when you're 38. Burns is 38 right now, about to be 39 next year. I know he's been talking about, they're offering him like a Kobe Covington or Michael Morales. Don't get me wrong, I do think that those are winnable matchups for him, less the Michael Morales one, but still, the winnable fights for Burns, I feel like in my mind, just kind of go down less and less each year, just purely due to age for this one. Burns is skilled. Burns is well-rounded. He has good he has good striking on the feet, has good grappling. That's obviously his shindig down there. So it's just a matter of father time getting the better of Gilbert Burns in this one. We've seen some absolute wars from him. We've seen great fights. It's not a matter of talent. It's just he's going to start losing to guys, or is losing to guys right now that I feel like 2 or 3 years ago we probably wouldn't have. Not to say that JDM wouldn't, you know what I mean? Burns is a fan favorite, and I'm sure he's going to be putting over like a dangerous guy. Like I just mentioned on Michael Morales, he's in talks of fighting next. Like, Burns is not going to be straight away. And look who he fought before. Sean Brady, young up-and-comer. JDM, young up-and-comer. Both those guys are dangerous. And even before that, he fought Khamzat Chimaev and many more. So at the end of the day, Gilbert Burns, I think Father Time might be getting the best, as sad as it is, because I am a Burns fan. But moving on, up next to the goat of all goats, Jose Aldo. Still cracking, baby. Still cracking. This guy literally is the only... Okay, wait, let me just say this. Jose Aldo already did retire, okay? Retired a year or two ago, decided to come back, had a great win over Jonathan Martinez, and now he's at the point, getting older and older. Now he's 38. Now he's coming off the loss at Mario Batista. It's crazy the difference you can do between like a May of 2024 and an October, okay? Because after he beat Martinez, it's like, oh, Aldo is back, man. He's getting he's able to still beat the prospects. He's in it. Maybe this is one of the best Aldos we've ever seen. Jesus Christ. But then now it's like, after he got smudged by Mario Batista, which granted most people thought he won the fight, and I think that, I'm not even going to get into Batista in this one, okay? It just sucks that Aldo took that fight, and now he's in this position, because if he just, proved that he beat the prospect, he's still in it, they could have given him like a Henry Cejudo. They could have given him like a Corey Sandhagen, a Davison Figueiredo. There's matchups. There's lots of fun matchups for Jose Aldo. Even, I'm not a super big fan of like the Dominic Cruz fight, but even that makes more sense, than fighting 2 prospects in a row for somebody like Aldo, who is, and I don't know why he took that fight. It's up to, I'm sure that he was going to go in, and Jose's a killer. I'm sure he was going in that fight, okay, another prospect. This is how I'm going to earn my way back to the title. I'm going to go out there with this guy, and then it's just one step closer and rise in the ranks, and I'm proving that I could still, even at 38, beat these young up-and-comers. And maybe that's why he took 2 prospects in a row. And at the end of the day, it was just fucking smudge fest. And now we're here and we're trying to figure out what the hell to do with Aldo, because this is a guy, like I said, he's already retired before, he's already a Hall of Famer. So like, what do you do now? I mean, in my opinion, I think he's going to fight probably once or twice next year, maybe in Rio, kind of a nice way to go out or whatever. And like I said, Aldo has looked good, like even after, I know that he loses, like, as of late, the past few years, to those very, very top fights, the Marabs and the Alexander Volkanovskis and, like, even the title fights, like a McGregor or Max Holloway, shit like that. But at the end of the day, Aldo is still he makes shit very, very competitive against a lot of the guys in the division. Now, don't get me wrong, there's some guys I could see, take out Aldo in a round. But at the end of the day, Aldo still very well rounded. His takedown defense still holds up so well, and we've seen that. And I gotta give respect to him because even at this age, he's gonna be 39 next year and he's still looking quick, still sharp on the feet. Takedown defense is good as ever, which is insane. But I just think he's at this point where he's like, okay, how much longer do I just kind of want to like put over guys or like keep going in and out of retirement, whatever the hell it may be. So I think we're going to be seeing, sadly, one or two more fights for Jose Aldo next year. I appreciate that he came back and wants to put on fights for the fans and he wants to kind of build up the legacy, wanted to go out there and get on another title run. And I think, it is what it is. This guy debuted April 2011 in the UFC, and before that, WEC. This guy has a lot of wear and tear, a lot of mileage, and the fact that he even fought twice this year is insane. So all due respect to Aldo, and still the skills are there, but I just think that Father Time has gotten the best, unfortunately, and I could see him kind of just putting it on hold for now, but permanently. Yeah, okay, y'all know what I'm saying. So moving on, up next to Jared Cannonier, ranked number 8 right now at middleweight. I think Cannonier is going to be retiring next year. He's 40 years old right now. And honestly, all due respect to Cannonier, he's been very active as of late. Fought 2 or 3 times this year, and now he's got a fight booked against, I believe it's RoboCop Rodriguez for February, sometime there. So, and that's a big prospect right now. That's a guy who's coming up right now and is very dangerous and can present a lot of problems for Cannonier, but Cannonier's still taking these fights, man. He just fought Cal Baraujo, another young up-and-comer, by the way. Before that, he just fought Nasruddin Imavov, up-and-comer. So it's just like Cannonier is not straying away from any dangerous fights. It doesn't matter. He's not being picky choosy, all right? No, I want to get this guy. I want to retain my legacy, and I want to keep my spot in the top 5. Like, he's not doing a Marvin Vettori rematch and shit, I got to put respect to Cannonier because he's staying active. He's fighting quick, and I think he realizes, like, okay, I'm 40 years old. I don't have a lot of time left. I'm not going to win the belt. Like, the Imavov fight, who knows what would have happened if that referee just didn't stop it, didn't do that early stoppage. Cannonier's career could be completely different right now. Would have had a 3-fight win streak. Who knows if he would have fought again after that or fought for a belt. Like, who the hell knows? Probably not a belt. But, like, Cannonier was getting a good win streak going, and even against Baraujo, that was a close competitive fight. Granted, Baraujo won, looked really, really good, but Cannonier is still making it competitive against these guys. And against Imavov, like I said, before the early robbery, like, Cannonier was looking really good in that fight and was up. So I just think, for as good as he looked, though, against Baraujo and Imavov and all the guys before or whatever, like, for as good as Cannonier looks at 40, and he is holding in there with a lot of these guys, I just think, like, how many times more is that going to happen, okay? I mean, what if he goes out there and he loses to RoboCop, close or not? Like, what are you going to do after that? Give this guy another, guy who's probably young, up and coming and hungry, because this is the guys that Cannonier is fighting. And again, all due respect to him, we as fans appreciate it. I'm sure the UFC appreciates it. The guys in our rankings, I'm sure, appreciate it. So all due respect to Cannonier, he's fighting like a badass and they're taking dangerous matchups and putting on fun fights, but 40 is 40 and it's unfortunate. You can tell that this guy really wants it, but it is what it is, sadly. So moving on up next to Kamaru Usman. So Kamaru Usman's going to be 38 years old next year, and man, I could see this retirement happening for him. I could see him going out there, probably just going to fight once more. He didn't fight all of 2024, which, interesting. I can understand it because when you're looking at this guy's UFC record, 15-3, and all 3 of those losses have been in his last 3 fights. So I can understand why Kamaru was taken off the year, and before that, look at that, he was being extremely active as the champion, he was lapping the division. So I know that some people were shouting him like, oh, why are you not? And, oh, one more thing, Jesus Christ, he stepped in short minute notice against Khamzat Chimaev, on like a week's notice or something like that, and that was one of the losses. He didn't even have to do that, I understand that people are shitting on him for not fighting this year, and I do understand it, but when you're honestly really looking at it, it makes a lot of sense, and I'm not going to blame the guy because, a very fun, active champion, had a good reign, Didn't have to take the last minute Chimaev fight, but he did. And when you're looking at it again, all 3 of his UFC losses have been his last 3 fights. So I understand why in his mind he's like, okay, I got to go out there in this next one. I have to be completely ready and at my best. And it sucks because we're not going to see the best version of Kamaru Usman because we're going to be getting a 37 or 38-year-old Kamaru Usman. And it's unfortunate because this guy's the second best, or some argue the best welterweight of all time. But I think they're going to match him up against like a JDM or a Joaquin Buckley. And I see both of those guys beating him. It's nothing wrong with Usman's skill set. You know, Usman is a very well-rounded fighter. He's going to bring problems to this guy. Like, I'm not saying that Usman's going to go out there. I can't see Usman just going out there and making this fight easy for these guys, okay? Like, I feel like whoever he's going to fight next, it's going to be competitive. Look how he did against Chimaev, who I was just fucking talking about, you know? That loss is aging very, very well because it gave Chimaev a very, very tough test. Took him to a draw, arguably, and don't get me wrong, I see Usman beating a lot of the guys still at welterweight, but it's just, I feel like the prospects, the young guys, they're really taking over, you know? We're seeing the Burns and the Covingtons and guys like that, you know? They're starting to kind of make their way out as these new guys come in, even like a Belal, who's the champion right now, you know, 36, and yeah, he beat the 35-year-old Curse once. How many more times are you going to do that, though? You know what I mean? So I can see Usman not really wanting to, like, tarnish the legacy, or I could see him kind of going out after his next fight, just kind of retiring where he is, and what sucks, though, about this, I will say, is that Usman, even this 37, 38-year-old Usman, right? If he just decided, I know that other people say this as well, and I'm going to agree with y'all. If he just moved to middleweight, okay, where the 35-year-old Curse doesn't fucking exist, okay, in that division. And on top of that, welterweight is just a division that I feel like is deeper, is more skilled. Nothing wrong with middleweight. Middleweight's very talented as well. But, like, you're telling me that Usman can't beat, like, a Marvin Vettori, a Brendan Allen, a Roman Dolidze. Like, he could be racking up these names, you know? I could see Usman making a fight against Whitaker or Strickland. Very, very competitive. Now, am I saying, is he going to beat those guys? I'm not sure. But middleweight, if he just moved up and he looked good against Chimaev, who now is a full-fledged 85er. I don't know. I don't know why he doesn't just make the move. I get it because your whole career and legacy has been at welterweight, but that doesn't have to define you. There's so many more winnable matchups at middleweight, you know? And again, I feel like age matters less up there when you're getting closer to 40. And like, you know, the UFC would give him a solid matchup. Like, they're not going to just fucking throw Usman to the wolves unless he asks for it. So I don't know why he doesn't just move to middleweight. I feel like he could have fought last year and still won. It is what it is. Usman, thank you very much for an amazing title reign. And he really is going down as the second best welterweight of all time, but I just see him going out next year, unfortunately. So it is what it is. Moving on up next to Jan Blachowicz from the light heavyweight division. He's 41 years of age right now. By the time he fights Carlos Ulberg next March, he's going to be 42. So Blachowicz, I see retiring for the light heavyweights, man. Let's talk about Blachowicz versus Ulberg since I mentioned that, okay? That's going to be one of those fights where I feel like if that happened 2 years ago, I feel like 10 out of 10 times I'm going to be picking Jan Blachowicz. Blachowicz is a very well-rounded fighter, you know, primarily a striker for sure, and he does have a lot of power on the feet. But also, he's proven over the years that his grappling is very solid as well. Now, don't get me wrong, he's going to be out-wrestling a lot of daggies, probably not, but Blachowicz is a very well-rounded fighter, you know, clean on the feet, he's good on the ground, he has strength, you know, whether it be in the grappling or in the striking, like, he has the power. But unfortunately, I just think it's one of those things where Father Time is going to get the best. And like I said with Gilbert Burns, he's going to lose to opponents where 2 or 3 years ago he probably wouldn't have lost to. Because Carlos Ulberg, don't get me wrong, he's an impressive prospect, but I can't see a guy who's 29-28ing Volkan Ozdemir and taking him into a close fight going out there and just putting on a masterclass over Jan Blachowicz from 2 or 3 years ago. You know, the same guy who has racked up a lot of names over very elite talent. And I just think for as good as Ulberg is, I think there's a lot of holes in his game, and I don't think he's like the most impressive prospect in the world. Like, I think there's a lot more impressive prospects at like a welterweight or a middleweight or even like a flyweight. You know what I mean? And that might be fucking crazy to say, okay? And I'm sorry, but I do think that Ulberg is good, but I think he's going to go and beat Jan Blachowicz in March. And it's unfortunate because, I don't know, it's just one of those things, Father Time, blah, 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 whatever the fuck. But I think after that, Blachowicz is going to retire. I mean, he's going to be 42 at that point and coming off of like a couple losses in a row. And like plus the draw from Magomed from like what, December of 22. So I can't see him sticking around after that, especially if it's like, you know, like a 30-27 for Ulberg, or Ulberg, God forbid, gets like a knockout or some crazy shit over Blachowicz. Like, I could see it being the end for him. But Blachowicz, it was a good career. Glad he made it to the championship heights. And thank you for the memories, but I think that the time has come. So that's going to be it for the names that I think are going to be retiring next year. But I do want to give some honorable mentions real quick. I think that Tony Ferguson, I could see retiring. The thing is, I could see Tony not retiring, okay? I could see him going, you know, and whether he fights in the UFC or not, I could see him fighting in the PFL, the GFL, like some fucking outside organization. I could see him boxing Jake Paul, some shit like that. I could see Tony Ferguson not retiring until I don't know. It's already been too late. I mean, he should have retired a year or two ago. But at the end of the day, we're still here, and he has the longest losing streak in UFC history. It's so unfortunate, man. I don't know why he's doing what he's doing. It is what it is. I feel like the team just has to snap him out of it. I'm sure they've tried. But Tim Elliott for the flyweights. Elliott has been around for goddamn ever, and he's just always been one of those guys where you're questioning, how are you in the rankings? Why are you here? Now we know why he's here, all right? Tough, Demetrius Johnson, blah, blah, blah. Okay, but Tim Elliott, it's just when you're looking at the flyweight rankings, okay, and you're looking at a lot of these, like, there's so much talent in there, and I get the name-wise, it's not the biggest or whatever the fuck, and you can say whatever you want, they're pipsqueaks, it's not entertaining, blah, 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 but flyweight has a lot of talented guys, and Tim Elliott is kind of just there, okay? And like, I feel like they're gonna feed him like a Joshua Van or some shit next, and he's gonna go out there, Van's gonna get, this guy's gonna get KO'd or subbed or in some regards, some facet, and I see him just going out there, and that's gonna be the end of Tim Elliott. This guy's ranked number 10 right now, by the way, for flyweight. Absolutely insane, especially when you're looking at who's like 11 through 15. But Kobe Covington for welterweight, I honestly could see Kobe retiring. Like, I could see Kobe just not fighting at all either. I don't know. I kind of threw Kobe in here because I could see Kobe going and doing a bunch of boxing fights or just not fighting again. Like, he's kind of realizing where he's at or whatever the fuck. I can't see Kobe being an active UFC fighter or putting over young up-and-coming prospects besides like Joaquin Buckley. I don't know. So Jim Miller for lightweight. I mean, clearly that one's pretty self-explanatory. Miller's been around for goddamn ever. All due respect to Jim Miller. Anthony Smith, he's been talking a lot about retirements lately as well, and we just saw him, been looking real rough past few years. I think it's about time for him as well. Justin Gaethje for lightweight. Now, I just did a video where I mentioned Gaethje the other day, and I did say that he could retire end of 25. Like, I could see him going out there, and if he loses to Dan Hooker, maybe he could take one more. So that's why I don't know if he'll retire in 2025. I could see him sticking around a little bit longer than like a Dustin Poirier. You know what I mean? I feel like Poirier has made it more clear. Like, I know that Gaethje only has 1 or 2 fights left, maybe even 3. But still, I just don't know how long breaks are going to be in between fights, or if he's going to win said fight or lose. We're just going to have to see. And then Alexander Volkanovski. Volk's my favorite fighter, and it hurts to just see what has transpired over the past year or two. It genuinely does hurt. This guy's the only fighter that I have a shirt for. Oh yeah, I'm the type of guy, I don't want to be bullied, might have to run it back with Makhachev. Oh, I'm just getting into my prime. It hurts to see everything that's been going down with Volk, and I just fucking know that they're gonna just put him against a Poirier. He's gonna go out there and get finished in a round or 2 or 3, and it's gonna be sad, and now we're just gonna question what the hell do we do with Volk. I mean, give him a guy like a Sterling or an Evelev, someone who isn't gonna beat him in a contest of power on the feet. Like, I can't see like a highlight KO coming in for Volk. That's who we need to give Volk after Topuria, okay? Maybe he'll retire if he loses, or after he loses to Poirier, or if he loses to Poirier. But I just think that Volk, the reason I didn't just say that I think he's going to retire next year, I think that his pride is too much. I think that he's not going to want to go out on 4 losses in a row. And the thing is, like, it's just wild because I do think that Volkanovski, besides Topuria and a Diego Lopez, I think he beats pretty much everybody at featherweight. I mean, he already has beaten half of them, but I'm just saying, like, when you're looking at these matchups, like, give him, like, an Arnold Allen or a Jigga Chikadze, Bryce Mitchell, Dan Ige, Lerone Murphy, bruv. Or even who I just said, in, like, an Aljamain Sterling or Movsar Evloev. Like, I think that Volk is so fucking skilled, and I do think that he can go out there and beat everyone in the division besides Topuria and maybe a Diego Lopez. I think that Lopez so well-rounded, and I think that he has a lot of power on the feet, and I could see him cracking Volk and taking his lights out. But again, when you remove those two, I really do think that Volk is that guy in the division. Before he did get knocked out by Topuria, he looked good in that first round, So and everyone likes to say that, like, the washed up Volk that showed up against Topuria. Like, granted, he shouldn't have fucking taken the fight against a big power puncher right after getting head kicked at lightweight against Makhachev and then making, like, such a fast turnaround when you're already such an active champion. That whole thing is such a shame because, like, the what ifs and blah, blah, blah. But I could just see Volk's pride not wanting to go out off a knockout loss. So, you know what? Whoever they give him, if it is one of those names, besides like a Lopez or someone, I like his chances in that fight. Now, granted, that's me talking now. Who knows how I'm going to be feeling after I just witness another Volk KO. And I really hope that Volk goes out there and makes it competitive against Topuria. I hope he looks good. God forbid, maybe I even hope he wins because, again, I'm a huge Volk fan, but it's just, I know that that's not going to happen and it hurts. And I could see Volk's ego or pride, whatever you want to call it. I could see him wanting to stick around, and as long as it doesn't become a Tony Ferguson situation, I'm fine. But once we get to, like, like that 4 loss mark in a row, like if he loses to Poirier and then somebody else, let's call it, Volk. All right, let's call it, man. All right, you're a top 5 fighter of all time. You're the featherweight GOAT. Like, let's just call it, brother, please. But anyways, guys, that is going to be it for all of the UFC fighters that I think are going to be retiring next year. What did you guys think? Let me know in the comments below what you thought of the video, what you thought of the predictions, and who you think is going to be retiring next year. And thank you so very much for making it this far in the video. I appreciate you all so very much. Thank you guys so very much for watching All the Smoke MMA. I appreciate you guys, and I will see you all next time.